Na unajua waziri, wakati tulikuwa tunafukuza Gachagua kazi, kuna kitu ilitembea hapo huko bunge. Wacha niseme ukweli. Kuna kitu ilitembea nini? Na accounting officer alikuwa mtu naitwa Aaron Cheriot, ndio alikuwa accounting officer. Wengine nimeona wanarukaruka hapa, walikamata hizo vitu na hawakujenga boma. Tafadhali, kila saa impeachment haikuji. Kama umepata kitu kwa impeachment ya Gachagua, tafadhali jenga boma mzuri. Ile boma nimeona na pesa ya Gachagua haitoshani. Kuna hisabu imepotea. Mambo ya kuharibu pesa yako na watu yellow huko Nairobi. Unapeana pesa kwa yellow huko Nairobi. Leta pesa hapa chini bana. Tumeelewana? Wale wanajua ile kitu vinaongea wanajua. Sijaona marupurupu na malipo ya hiyo impeachment, sijaona kama imefika Bungoma. Ile nyumba nimeona juzi hapa, hiyo ni nyumba, hiyo mabati haifai kwa mabati kama hiyo. Haifai mabati kama hiyo.
All right. So before we talk about the other politics, he makes a very serious allegation there of, people being bribed in the Senate during the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua as deputy president at the time.
Yes.
You were Senate minority whip at the time.
Absolutely.
Do you know anything about this? Money being paid to senators to vote a particular way?
You know, this thing is always said. I have heard it a million times, and every time they're invited to demonstrate who was giving the money and for what reason, they have never demonstrated that. So it's something that I actually personally don't pay too much attention to. I think you should be able to speak to that accounting officer that he has named there. Let him account. Tell us, I got money from this guy and gave this guy. That's all we need, because there's a lot of talk in politics and people just trying to besmirch and smear people's names.
But did you hear of any of these allegations?
I have heard these things, I think, from the time that Rigathi was impeached. These stories have been there. This is not the first time that you're hearing that story. And all we need now, Kenyans, is for them to level with Kenyans. Tell us the money was picked from Yvonne and given to Sifuna. That's all we need.
Have you did you receive any money during the impeachment?
No, they should come and tell us who gave us money.
So you didn't receive any payment?
You see, like right now,
to induce you to vote during the impeachment?
I didn't need any inducement when it came to Rigathi's impeachment, because publicly I had taken positions against some of his conduct and his pronouncements, and I'd even at some point, there is one of the grounds of impeachment there was his interference in the running and management of Nairobi City County. I don't know if you remember that. And I had actually put out a public statement saying that he's going too far in his interference with devolution, because that's what I was elected to do. There's a letter that I did, and I wish you had informed me that you'd be discussing this, because I would bring you a copy of this letter. So I actually believed at that particular moment in time, I don't need any inducement to do that, you know. So all of these allegations, they're just wild allegations, because they're always looking for a way to besmirch people's reputations. I remember similar allegations were made by the Council of Governors, you remember. The Senate invited them to present that evidence that some senators were extorting them money. Up to today, Yvonne, you know, it's one thing to make an allegation, and legally, he who alleges must prove. So, for me, these stories are going to continue. Until the day that somebody comes and shows you that this money came from Yvonne and it was given to someone, then these other things are just attempts to muddy the waters. Because that's the same question Frederick Okango is asking on X. We will get to it in a moment, but let me just read it out. He says there were allegations that you have alluded to in February of this year. COG formally naming you amongst 4 senators of extortion, intimidation, harassment. Is he clean? He asked. So how do you know how that story ended, Yvonne? How did that story end for the COG? The COG made accusations in public, but when they made an apology, they made it in private. They came to the Senate and apologized to the Senate, because they, what is it called? The head of the institution there, called the Speaker, Kingi, he actually told them, you come and tell us what accusations you have against, or the proof that you have against these senators. And there was nothing. They actually came and apologized. There was another case in the National Assembly which was very curious regarding one of my allies, the Honorable Jack Wamboka. and I happened to represent him. You know him, it went all the way to hearing, which is something that we didn't see in the Senate. We had a sitting of the Powers and Privileges Committee in the National Assembly, and I was very embarrassed because the person who was making that accusation was actually Reverend Kobia, somebody who has a very high reputation and somebody who I have a lot of respect for. So when we were cross-examining him during those hearings, we asked him, even the people, you know, he said he had heard from somebody else that the Honorable Wamboka was seeking or soliciting funds from him, and the people who he said he heard from had written letters to the National Assembly saying that is not a correct position, you know. So it is one thing to allege things, but when we come to the crux of a matter and tell you, okay, show us this evidence that you have against so and so, they always scramble and cross-exam. The biggest complaint from Reverend Kobia was that Jack Wamboka, in his handling of a committee meetings, is very rough. You know, the way he talks. And in fact, he compared Mheshimiwa Wamboka to the other chair of cohesion in the Senate. I think it's Senator Chute. So I asked him, do you really expect all of us to be the same in the way that we talk or the words that we choose and how we behave? No, the biggest problem is that he felt that he was being handled roughly. It's the same thing with the members of the Council of Governors and the experiences in the Senate Public Accounts Committee. But I've argued, Yvonne, that there is no senator who can be nice in the face of some of the things that we have seen being brought out of the County Public Accounts Committee. And one of the things that people forget is that those responses come from the governors themselves. So, for instance, my friend in Embu, she came to the Senate and she told us she took 10 million shillings from the KIPES project, which is the County Aggregation and Industrial Parks project, to throw a bash for the border. My brother from Vihiga did the same. They took 5 million shillings and threw a housewarming for the completion of the Speaker's house. You have our brother from Taraka, for instance. He comes and the responses are so bad when you tell him, just read for me what you have written here. He says, Sifuna, I can't read, I forgot my glasses at home. So then they say we are harassing them. They are saying we are using the committee for political, to settle political scores and so on and so forth. But you should press them, because when they call those press conferences, Yvonne, your media houses are there. You people never press these governors and say, why don't you tender that evidence against Sifuna? Which is this governor who says I extorted them? What is the evidence against them? So wamejaribu kuharibu jina na imekataa. You see, so they will throw around all these sorts of things. But for me, our job is to remain focused. Some of these people who are throwing around mud here, if their files are open, the Kenyans will be shocked.
I want us to talk about, Linda Mwananchi and the movement.
You want me to tell you about my house first? Because it was in the same clip, but you've only focused on one piece.
Tell us
first
about
of all,
your
Kenyans
house,
must know that I am very proud of that house. I built that house in 2015. And on average, I spent a maximum 2 weeks out of a year in that house when I take my daughter home for Christmas. Those people who are saying, oh, sijui what, it's okay. Some of us are built different, Yvonne. We are not attracted to flashy things and grandiosity. You know, I see some people saying, oh, because you are so and so, you should have this and this. It is possible to be modest. I remember you were with us. I think you came to Raila's home in Opoda. Is it a grand structure? It's just a house. It's just a house in the village. Even his house here in Karen, it's a very modest house by the current standards. I've seen people building monstrosities there, wall to wall. So it just depends on who you are and what things you fancy. Some of us are okay for as long as you're comfortable with some of these things, and we're not attracted to this grandiosity. So that one is neither here nor there. And the fact that it is that house that people are discussing, it means wabetafuta story imewashinda. And our focus, our challenge is to remain focused on making sure that we succeed in the next election. Yeah.
Well, to do that, perhaps coalition building might be one of those. That's the nature of our politics in this country. People build coalitions. What principles would guide any coalition you build or any coalition that you're part of?
I think that's what I started with by saying we have a team of people who we believe can help us develop a platform. We're not even calling it a manifesto because the word manifesto has a lot of negative connotations. Kenyans are used to all these lofty promises. You have a document that is 100 pages, and then none of those things is fulfilled. And which is why I was dissuading you, Yvonne, from discussing these positions of, which seat are you going for, who's going to be the deputy, who's going to be number one. Those are secondary conversations. We want to start these conversations with our partners by trying to understand. First, we have a policy proposal, a platform proposal that is going to revert the country back to its democratic ideals. The 6 values that I've talked about in our constitution, because that's the government that Kenyans said they wanted when they passed this constitution. What is your understanding of rule of law? What is your understanding of freedom? What is your understanding of democracy? How have we gotten ourselves here? And what is your understanding of the sort of country that people want immediately we are able to take power? Those conversations to us as Linda Mwananchi are more important than these other things where people are saying, who do you go into coalition with, who do you go into coalition, or who you don't go into coalition with. So that is where we are. I think we should be able to have those conversations with our friends. You saw us having a meeting with the Honorable Matiang'i, and we are open about even the issues we have with them, and we say it publicly there. When I met Matiang'i at a funeral in Kisii, I reminded him of the experience we had with him in Bonchari and the experience I had with Rigathi Gachagua during the times of when he was deputy president. So we are not going to shy away from difficult conversations about some of these people's, public record and conduct in public office. We have to have those difficult conversations and say, if we agree that this is the country that we want to see, then who's the best person to be able to deliver that new country that Kenyans seem to be telling us they want?
Would you